Good evening. A man abused by a paedophile priest in Sussex says Baroness Butler-Sloss is the wrong person to lead an inquiry into how public bodies dealt with allegations of child abuse. Phil Johnson says she excluded his allegations of abuse at the hands of a bishop from a public report because she cared about the church and didn't want to give the press a bishop.
Well, Baroness Butler-Sloss has now been asked to look into how the government handled allegations of child abuse by senior politicians in the 1980s, and she has already faced calls to stand down. Colin Campbell has our exclusive report.
3 years ago, Lady Butler-Sloss conducted a review of sexual abuse perpetrated by Anglican clergy in Sussex. After completing it, she spoke to victim Phil Johnson, who was seriously sexually abused by priests Roy Cotton and Colin Pritchard.
I felt that she was showing bias and she wasn't being impartial. She told me that she cared very much about the church and seemed to be wanting to protect the church's image.
The conversation took place in Lady Butler-Sloss's office in the House of Lords in March 2011. Phil Johnson alleged during the meeting that Bishop Peter Ball had inappropriately touched him when he was a child. He says Lady Butler-Sloss went on to say she did not want to include the bishop's name in her report because she did not want to give the press a bishop. He says she went on to tell him that she would instead include details about the allegation in private correspondence to the Archbishop of Canterbury, adding that if she included the bishop's name in her report, it would detract from abuse by the two priests, which was far more serious. Bishop Peter Ball has since been charged and is facing trial.
Well, she gave me several reasons, one of which was that she cared for the church and seemed to be wanting to protect the church's image, so didn't want to generate any excessive negative publicity for the church. And she expressed that by saying that the press would love a bishop, and she didn't want to give the press that trophy, if you like.
Phil Johnson did agree with Lady Butler-Sloss's suggestion at the time, but says now he felt he had little choice in the matter.
So she rationalised this by saying that if she gave the press a bishop, then that would detract from my own personal story.
Yesterday there were calls for Lady Butler-Sloss to stand down from her role as newly appointed head of a national inquiry looking at child abuse. Her late brother, Sir Michael Havers, was Attorney General during the 1980s, when it's alleged that abuse by public figures was covered up. Phil Johnson, who lives here in Eastbourne, has battled for the truth for over 25 years. He accepts Lady Butler-Sloss did pass on his allegation of abuse, but he claims it wasn't done in an open and transparent way. The report she completed in Sussex in 2011 contained inaccuracies.
Even when I wrote to Baroness Butler-Sloss and pointed the errors out, my comments were ignored. And I am amazed that a judge of such seniority would ignore evidence like that. I don't understand it.
8 months after it was published, Lady Butler-Sloss expressed regret for the inaccuracies, which she admitted arose from her failure to corroborate information given to her by senior Anglican figures.
There were concerns raised in Chichester during the Butler-Sloss review. Those concerns were eventually taken seriously. However, it took a considerable time to persuade all people involved in the Butler-Sloss inquiry that they should be taken seriously.
Phil Johnson now sits on the National Safeguarding Panel for the Church of England. He says he doesn't have any confidence in Lady Butler-Sloss's ability to get to the truth. Colin Campbell, BBC South East Today, Eastbourne.
Well, Colin Campbell is here in the studio with us now. Colin, any response tonight from the government or from Baroness Butler-Sloss?
Yeah, we have received a statement from Baroness Butler-Sloss via the Home Office, Polly. In this statement, she says that throughout her many years of public service, she always has striven to be fair and compassionate, mindful, she says, of the very real suffering of those who have been victims of crime or injustice. She goes on to say that she's honoured to be leading the national inquiry into whether public bodies and other non-state institutions have done enough to protect children from sexual abuse. She says that she is now assembling a panel of experts so the very important work can get underway. Henry Smith is the MP for Crawley, one of her many supporters.
I think the victims of the appalling sexual abuse that have come to light and the general public want a full inquiry to get on and work out what happened and see if anyone needs to be brought to justice for that, and lessons learnt for the future. And that's why I think the government are right to get on with an independent public inquiry, and I think Baroness Butler-Sloss is the right person to do that.
Well, in the last few minutes we've received further communication from Baroness Butler-Sloss. She says that she has never put the reputation of any institution, including the Church of England, above the pursuit of justice for victims.
Thanks, Colin.